Hey guys, tonight I want you to lie back, let your shoulders relax, and step quietly into a dark little town at the edge of the Iowa hills. You're not in a sunny prairie scene from a storybook. You're standing in Burr Oak, sometime after midnight, in the summer of 1877. The air smells like damp earth, horse sweat, and the last smoke from a lamp somebody just blew out. The street is only a dirt track, lined with a few wooden buildings and one long pale hotel that squats over a stone basement like a tired animal. Listen for a moment. There is no fiddle music here, no cheerful square dance. There is only the creak of a wagon being loaded in a hurry, and the small, sleepy sounds of 3 little girls being woken up before their eyes have decided to open. You're inside one cramped room in that hotel's basement now. This is where Charles and Carolyn Ingalls have been living with their daughters, Mary, Laura and Carrie, packed into the same level as the kitchen and the dining room, with the saloon roaring above their heads most nights. Tonight, the saloon is finally quiet. The danger is not the noise, it is the debt. You watch Pa move through the half-dark lamplight, catching the lines in his face. He is not the confident hero from a children's book cover. He is a man who has run out of options. The rent is overdue. The landlord has talked very calmly about taking the horses, and without those horses this family does not move. Without those horses this family does not eat. So, Pa does the one thing that still feels like a choice. He runs before anyone can stop him. He has already backed the wagon up to the door. The canvas cover glows faintly. A pale shell in the darkness. Inside the room, Ma is folding what little they own, blankets, worn dresses, a few dishes wrapped in cloth, moving with that tight, quiet efficiency of a woman who has done this too many times, in too many places. You hear her voice, low and steady as she wakes the girls, Mary first, then Laura, then little Carrie, who is still half a bundle of sleep-entangled hair. There is no explanation. There is no speech about adventure. Just, wake up, we're going. Outside, the wagon creaks as wagon box meets weight. Inside, you feel the air of the room already beginning to empty, as if their leaving has pulled some of the life out of the walls. Pause here for a second. You already know one version of this family, the version that lives in neat chapters, or where every hardship is trimmed and polished until it looks almost cozy. But tonight, you're watching the chapter Laura never let you see, the chapter she later erased. Why? What happened in this town that was so raw, so humiliating, that she chose to leave an entire year of her life in the dark? Hold that question. We're going to live inside that missing year. For now, stay with the wagon. You hear Pa's boots on the steps as he comes back for another armful. You see the tightness at the corners of his mouth, the way he avoids looking directly at his daughters, as if their faces are one more thing he has to carry and cannot afford to drop. He has made promises to keep them together, to keep them fed, to never let them be split apart by poverty or by other people's plans. Tonight, every one of those promises feels like it is balanced on the edge of a knife. Then there is Laura, 9, maybe 10, all sharp eyes and stubborn spine, sitting up on her straw tick in the half-dark. She does not understand everything, but she understands enough. She has listened to rent talks through thin walls. She has seen the way Pa's shoulders sag when he thinks no one is watching. She has watched her mother push away her own hunger so that the children will not see her mouth stay empty. And she has already heard an offer that still burns in her chest. Days earlier, in this same town, a doctor's wife had looked at her. A capable, wiry girl who could scrub, cook, mind children, and keep a house running, and said something that sounded on the surface like kindness. She had offered to take Laura, to adopt her, then to treat her just like her own, if only Laura would go and live with her and help around the house. On paper, it could be dressed up as generosity. In truth, it would have meant one less mouth for Pa to feed, one less child for Caroline to cover at night, counting breaths in the dark. One daughter turned into someone else's servant, under someone else's roof, in exchange for the bare promise of comfort. Caroline said no. She shut that door with a firmness that surprised even herself. But saying no did not make the offer disappear. It hung in the air of this town like coal smoke. It turned every unpaid bill into a warning. It turned every look from a neighbour into a question. If you cannot pay, will you surrender a child? Now you understand why this wagon is being loaded so silently. This is not the proud departure of pioneers driving west with their heads high. This is flight. This is a family slipping out under darkness because staying until morning might mean losing more than furniture or horses. It might mean losing a daughter. You step back and look at Burr Oak itself. It is not a wide open prairie with wind in the grass. It is a tight little settlement tucked near the Iowa-Minnesota border, built during a decade when the whole region has been battered from two sides at once. For years, swarms of Rocky Mountain locusts have eaten fields down to bare earth, leaving stalks where wheat once stood and wiping out harvests across Minnesota, Iowa, and beyond. Imagine field after field turned to stubble in a single day. Imagine the sound, like a storm without rain, as insects arrive in such numbers that people describe them as clouds, as snow, as something that blots out the sun. Imagine watching the one thing you counted on, your crop, vanish beneath a living blanket of wings. Those plagues did not come alone. They arrived in the same decade as a deep economic crash, banks failing, railroad schemes collapsing, credit drying up. It was called the Panic of 1873, and by the time the Ingalls family reached Burr Oak, it had twisted into a long depression that pulled small towns and frontier families down together. That is how a man like Charles Ingalls ends up here, in a stone-walled basement under somebody else's hotel. He has already lost a farm at Walnut Grove. He has already buried an infant son, Freddie, on his brother's land in Minnesota, where after grasshoppers and debt stripped away any sense of safety. By the time he brings his family to Burr Oak in late 1876, the story is simple. There is no land left to lose, only labour. A friend named Stedman owns a hotel, the Burr Oak House, also called the Master's Hotel, and needs workers. Pa can fix things, haul, tend bar. Ma can cook for guests, scrub, serve meals. The daughters can clear dishes and make beds. In exchange, the family gets a room and food, and maybe a little cash if business is good. You walk through that hotel now. Downstairs, the kitchen heat presses against your skin. The dining room smells of boiled coffee, grease, and damp wool. On the main floor, there is a room that serves as a saloon. Men drink there, laugh too loud, stumble home late. For a family that once lived in a dugout by a quiet creek, the constant noise and rough company feel like a step down, not up. And under all of that, in the basement, is the one crowded room where the Ingalls sleep. Picture Mary and Laura carrying plates up and downstairs, washing dishes until their fingers wrinkle, then hurrying to school and back again because education is still non-negotiable in this family, even when coins are scarce. Picture Caroline trying to hold a line of respectability in a place where men stagger in from the saloon next door, where the walls are thin, and where her daughters have to step past drunken voices to get upstairs. The arrangement with Stedman does not last. The hotel is in the town the railroad has failed to love. Guests are fewer than hoped. The work is heavy. The pay, when it arrives at all, feels small compared to the hours. Eventually the partnership sours. Pa looks for other work, at a mill for a time, then at whatever short-term jobs will take him, work that pulls him away from home for days, and while he is gone, the bills grow teeth. Grocery bills, doctor's fees, rent owed to a man named Bisbee, one of the richer figures in town who can afford to be patient, until he decides not to be patient any longer. You stand in the small red brick house on the edge of town where, in May of 1877, Caroline gives birth to Grace, their fifth child. The room is simple, the floorboards creak. Outside, the dirt road runs past, same as always. Inside, another mouth has just arrived in a home already crowded with worry. Laura remembers knowing, even as a child, that Pa and Ma were troubled. Not just tired, not just busy, troubled. And the kind of worry that makes parents think you're not listening, when in fact every whispered conversation comes through the walls as clearly as if it were spoken into your own ear. Now go back to that doctor's wife, Mrs. Starr. In this small town, everyone knows who is doing well and who is not. The doctor's household has stability. Regular pay, a solid house, no basement room beneath a saloon. She watches the Ingalls family struggle from a comfortable distance and offers what she can live with. Send Laura to live with us. She will help around the house. We will adopt her. We will treat her like our own. On the surface, it sounds clean. Underneath, it is knotted with power. In the 1870s, children from poor families are often placed out with richer households. Sometimes it is true adoption. Often it is something closer to indenture, a long, unpaid job dressed up as rescue, where a child's labour pays off a family's debts or simply fills the needs of a home that wants inexpensive help. Carolyn hears this offer and feels all of that in the space of a breath. She knows what it would mean to let her daughter go, to trade one kind of suffering for another, less visible one. She also knows that saying no does not erase the fact that the offer was even thinkable. The very fact that someone dared to ask tells her exactly how the town sees them, as a family pressed enough by debt that perhaps, with the right words, a child could be pried loose. So she refuses. She keeps Laura. And from that moment, the clock in Burr Oak starts ticking louder, because once you have turned down a bargain like that, the question becomes simple and brutal. If you will not pay with a child, how will you pay at all? Which brings you back to the wagon in the dark. You watch Pa tie down one last bundle. You see Ma help the girls climb into the wagon bed, their nightgowns hidden under quickly thrown-on dresses, their hair in hurried braids. The wheels are already angled toward the road out of town, the way back toward Minnesota and Walnut Grove, where they will try, again, to start over. No neighbours come out to wave. No one stands in the doorway to wish them well. Most people in town will not even know the exact hour they left. In the morning, there will just be an empty house, unpaid rent, and a landlord staring at an open stall where 2 horses used to stand. You sit with that image for a moment. A family driving away in darkness. Not because of some grand call to adventure, but because staying until sunrise might have meant losing the very child who would one day write her life for the world. Later, when Laura shapes her childhood into books, this entire year will disappear. She will move you neatly from Plum Creek to Dakota, from one set of hardships to another, without stopping here in Burr Oak at all. Tonight, you know better. Tonight, you have watched her climb into that wagon in the dark, carrying grief for a lost baby brother, fear of being given away, and the stubborn, unspoken promise that if she survives this, she will be the one who decides which parts of this story ever see the light. And this is only the first night. We have not yet walked with her into the hotel basement. We have not fully lived the days of unpaid labour, the saloon noise above, the bucket brigade fighting a fire next door, or the slow, grinding way debt can hollow out the inside of a family long before anyone sees the collapse from the outside. That is the year we are going to live in, piece by piece. The year Pa's courage and Pa's desperation were the same thing. The year a doctor's wife looked at a poor girl and saw a bargain. The year Laura Ingalls Wilder chose to hide. When you're ready, we will step back to the beginning of that missing year, to the moment the Locusts and the bank failures drove this family off their farm, to the death of baby Freddie on the way to Iowa, and to the first time Burr Oak came into view as a promise of work instead of the trap it turned out to be. The wagon rolls forward into darkness, wheels grinding soft dirt into nothing. You feel the rhythm of it under your body, the sway, the creak, the small lurches when a wheel finds a stone. Behind you, Burr Oak is already gone. Ahead, somewhere in the black, is Walnut Grove, and the slim hope that returning will somehow feel different than leaving did the first time. But you are not there yet. Before you can understand why this family is running, you need to see what they were running from the first time. Before Burr Oak, before the hotel, before the offer that nearly cost them a daughter. So let the wagon fade for a moment. Let the darkness pull back like a curtain. You're going to step into a different summer, a different field, and a different kind of fear altogether. It is June of 1874. You're standing barefoot in tall prairie grass near Walnut Grove, Minnesota. On a homestead claim the Ingalls family has worked into something that almost feels like permanence. The wheat is knee-high and green, bending in long waves under a sky so blue it makes your eyes ache. This is the year things were supposed to turn. This is the harvest that was going to pay debts, buy seed for next year, maybe let Caroline stop counting every egg before it goes to town. Charles has already started talking about what they will do when the crop comes in. Small things, careful things, but things that involve a future tense. Then you hear it. At first it sounds like wind in the distance, or maybe hail forming in a cloud you cannot see yet. A low, strange hum that does not quite fit the rhythm of the day. You look up, the sky's still blue, the sun is still bright, but the sound is getting louder, and it is coming from the west like something with weight behind it. And then the air goes dark. Not night dark, not storm dark. The kind of dark that comes when something living blocks out the light. You see them now. Rocky Mountain locusts, millions of them, filling the sky in a shifting, glittering cloud that looks like snow made of wings and legs. They do not arrive gently. They descend like hunger given form, landing on the wheat, on the fence posts, on the roof of the house, on your arms and your hair, and the ground under your feet until the earth itself seems to be moving. Listen to the sound they make. Not one locust, a million. Wings brushing against wings, mandibles cutting through stalks, bodies piling onto bodies in layers so thick you can hear the weight of them bending the wheat flat. Some people later say it sounded like a train that never stopped. Others say it sounded like the end of the world chewing. You try to wave them away from your face. It does no good. They land on your hand, on your sleeve, in your hair. Their legs scratch. Their wings leave a dusty, oily smear on your skin. You run toward the house, and the whole way, they fall around you like living hail. By the time you reach the door, the damage has already started. You turn and look back at the field. The green is disappearing, not slowly, fast, the way a tablecloth gets pulled off a table in one clean jerk. Wheat stalks that were thick and full 5 minutes ago are now bare sticks. The leaves on the garden plants are gone. The bark on the young trees near the house is being stripped in the ragged patches. Charles is already outside with a broom, trying to sweep them off the doorframe, off the windowsills, off anything he can reach. It is useless. For every dozen he knocks away, 100 more land. Caroline has pulled the girls inside and stuffed rags under the door. But the insects are so small and so many that they find cracks no one knew existed. You find them in the flour barrel, in the water bucket, on the underside of the table where no breeze should carry them. By nightfall the field is gone, not damaged, gone. Stubble and dirt, same as if it had never been planted at all. And the locusts are still there, covering the ground in a living carpet, resting for the night so they can finish what is left in the morning. You sit in the dim house that night, listening to the scratch and rustle of a million insects on the roof, on the walls, in the grass outside. It is the kind of sound that gets inside your head and will not leave. Mary and Laura are pressed close to their mother. Carrie is too young to understand, but she can feel the fear in the air thick as smoke. Charles does not say much. What is there to say? One day you have a crop. The next you have nothing. When the sun rises, the locusts rise with it. They lift off in that same strange cloud, wings catching the light, and then they move on, south, east, wherever hunger and wind take them next. They leave behind a landscape that looks like it has been scraped with a blade. No wheat, no oats, no vegetables in the garden, just dirt, and the smell of something that was alive yesterday and is not anymore. The banks do not care about locusts. The men who lent Charles money for seed do not care about locusts. The grocer who extended credit does not care about locusts. All they care about is whether you can pay, and you cannot. So, you do what frontier families have always done when the ground under them gives way. You borrow more, promise harder, and plant again. Maybe next year will be different. Maybe the insects will not come back. Maybe the rain will be kinder, the frost will hold off longer, and the harvest will finally be the one that breaks even. But the locusts laid eggs before they left. Deep in the soil, in every field they touched, they left behind the next wave. And when spring comes in 1875, the ground does not sprout wheat. It sprouts locusts, small, wriggling, hungry, and already eating before they even grow wings. You watch Charles replant. You watch him try a field farther from the creek, thinking maybe the insects prefer low ground. You watch him trade labour for seed he cannot afford and plant it anyway, because not planting means giving up, and giving up means losing the claim, the house, everything. By summer of 1875, the young locusts have matured, and the cycle begins again. They do not even need the sky this time. They are already here, hatching from the dirt you're standing on. 2 years, 2 total losses, and in between, in November of 1875, Caroline gives birth to a son, Charles Frederick, called Freddie, the first boy after 3 daughters. For a few weeks, the house holds something other than dread. There is a baby. There are small clothes sewn in lamplight. There is the cautious, half-spoken hope that maybe this child, this son, will grow up to see better years than these. But Freddie is not a strong baby. Caroline knows it. Charles knows it. They do not say it aloud, but you can see it in the way they watch him, the way they hold him a little longer than they held the others, as if the tightness of their arms might keep something fragile from breaking. By the spring of 1876, it is clear the Walnut Grove claim is finished. The debts are deeper than the crops will ever be. There is no third planting. There is no miracle recovery. There is only the long, slow mathematics of failure. Add up what you owe, subtract what you have, and face the number that remains. That is when William Stedman makes his offer. Stedman is a Walnut Grove man who has already decided his future is not here. He has bought a hotel in a little town called Burr Oak, just over the border in Iowa, and he needs help running it. He knows Charles can build, fix, manage. He knows Caroline can cook for a crowd and keep a house in order. He offers them work, room, board, and a small wage in exchange for labour. It is not what Charles wanted. It is not land. It is not independence. But it is survival, and survival has become the only ambition left. So, in July of 1876, the Ingalls family loads a wagon one more time. Not with hope this time, just with what fits. They leave the claim behind, the debts behind, the 2 years of eaten fields behind. Ahead of them is Iowa, a hotel, and a promise of work that at least will not depend on whether the sky decides to darken with wings. The journey is slow. The girls are used to wagons by now. This is not their first move, not even their third, but Freddie is only 8 months old, and the heat and dust and constant jostling do not agree with him. He fusses. He will not nurse well. Caroline holds him in the back of the wagon, rocking him in rhythm with the wheels, whispering things only mothers whisper when they are trying to bargain with a future they cannot see. They stop at Peter Ingalls' farm in South Troy, Minnesota, later called Zumbro Falls, because Peter is Charles's brother, and because Caroline needs rest, and because Freddie needs more than a wagon bed and a blanket thrown over a trunk. You step into that farmhouse now. It is cooler inside, away from the sun. There is space to lay the baby down properly, to try to get him to take milk, to watch his small chest rise and fall and count each breath like it is currency you're spending too fast. But something is wrong. Freddie is not just fussy now, he is limp. His skin is too hot, or maybe too cool. Caroline cannot tell any more. Her own hands are shaking. He will not look at her the way he did yesterday. His eyes are unfocused, wandering, like he's already somewhere else and cannot find his way back. And then, on August 27th, 1876, he stops breathing. You're in the room when it happens. You see Caroline's face go still in a way that is worse than crying. You see Charles step outside because the walls are suddenly too close and the air is too thin. You see Mary and Laura pulled into another room by an aunt's hands, their questions unanswered because no one has words yet for what just broke. Later, Caroline will say that Freddie had never been a truly healthy baby, that he had suffered convulsions before. Later, she will say that everything would have been different if Freddie had lived. But right now, in this moment, there is no later. There is only a body that is too small and too still, and a mother whose arms will not stop trying to hold something that is already gone. They bury him on Peter's land. There is no stone grand enough to matter, just earth and a prayer, and the terrible knowledge that in 11 years the Zumbro River will flood this farm so completely that no one will ever be able to say exactly where that grave was. The Ingalls family does not stay for long. They cannot. They have no home to return to. Walnut Grove is behind them, stripped and foreclosed. The only direction left is forward, toward Burr Oak, toward the job that is still waiting, toward a future that now has a hole in it the exact size and shape of a 9-month-old boy. So the wagon rolls on. You are in it now, in the days after the burial. The wheels turn. The landscape slides past. Trees, fields, small towns that do not stop to ask what you're carrying. Inside the wagon, no one speaks much. Laura watches her mother's face and sees something there she's never seen before. Not just sadness, but a kind of flatness, like a fire that has burned all the way down and is now just ash pretending to be warm. When the town of Burr Oak finally comes into view, it does not look like rescue. It looks like 3 dusty streets, a handful of buildings, and one long hotel that squats at the centre of it all like something that has been there too long and settled too deep into the ground to ever move again. Charles pulls the wagon up to the door. William Stedman steps out, smiling, ready to show them the place, explain the work, make promises about how this arrangement will be good for everyone. He does not yet know what they're carrying with them. He does not yet know that the woman stepping down from the wagon is holding herself together with nothing but will and the knowledge that 3 living daughters are still counting on her to remain standing. You follow them inside. The hotel is larger than it looked from the street. 3 stories, wood frame, with a stone foundation that houses the basement. Downstairs there is a big kitchen, a dining area, and one small room off to the side. That room, Stedman explains, is theirs. 1 room for 5 people. The basement stays cool in summer, he says, like that is a gift. Carolyn steps into that room and sees a space barely large enough for the bed, a trunk, and the bodies of her children laid out on the floor at night. Above her head, she can already hear boots on the floorboards. The saloon is up there, Stedman explains, part of the building, good for business, keeps the hotel full. She does not say what she's thinking, that 1 week ago she was burying her son, and now she's standing in a stone-walled basement under a bar being told this is the new shape her life will take. But she nods. She sets down her bag. She smooths her skirt and asks where the kitchen is, because if this is survival, then survival means getting to work before anyone notices you are breaking. That night, the family sleeps in the basement for the first time. Above them, the saloon is loud. Laughter, arguments, the scrape of chairs, the thud of boots. The walls are thin. Every sound travels. Laura lies awake on a pallet on the floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to strangers' voices, and thinking about the prairie where the only sound at night used to be wind and sometimes a fox calling in the dark. This is not that. This is something smaller, louder, and infinitely more trapped. And this basement room, this borrowed space, this life that smells like someone else's cooking and someone else's whiskey, this is where the missing year begins. Tomorrow, the work starts. Tomorrow, Caroline will cook for men she does not know. Tomorrow, Mary and Laura will learn to carry plates without spilling and to make beds in rooms that reek of tobacco and sweat. Tomorrow, Charles will fix what breaks and pours drinks and try to remember what it felt like to own something, instead of just working in it. But tonight you sit with them in that basement room and let the weight of it settle. They have traded a plague of locusts for a life underground. They have traded the open sky for a ceiling that will not stop making noise, and they have done it all with the fresh memory of a grave they will never be able to visit again, because the river will erase it before they ever get the chance to go back. This is the year Laura will never write about. This is the year that starts here, in the dark, under a stranger's saloon, with a mother who is not crying, because if she starts, she's afraid she will not stop. She does not sleep. Caroline knows, lying on the thin mattress in the basement dark, that if she closes her eyes now, she will not hear the clock that does not exist but ticks anyway in her head. 4 o'clock is coming. The kitchen upstairs will need a fire lit, water heated, biscuit started, coffee boiling before the first boarder stumbles down expecting breakfast. So she lies still, feeling Charles breathing beside her, hearing the soft rustle of Mary and Laura on their pallets on the floor, and counts the hours of work waiting on the other side of dawn. When the darkness finally starts to thin, she rises. No lamp yet. She does not want to wake the girls until she has to. She moves by feel, finding her dress, her apron, her shoes. Her hands know the motions. They have dressed in the dark before, in other houses, other hard seasons. The dress is the same one she wore yesterday. It will be the same one she wears tomorrow. There is no closet full of options here. There is only what fits in a trunk and what still has enough fabric left to be decent. She climbs the narrow stairs from the basement to the kitchen, and the air changes. Down below it is cool and damp, the smell of earth and stone. Up here it is wood smoke, old grease, and the faint sour tang of beer soaked into floorboards that will never come clean. The kitchen is large, larger than any she has worked in before, but it does not belong to her. None of it does. The pots, the stove, the long wooden table scarred with knife marks, the shelves stacked with chipped dishes. She's borrowing all of it in exchange for the labour of her body, and the debt is calculated in meals she will cook for people she does not know. She lights the stove, feeds it kindling, then larger wood, and waits for the heat to catch. While the fire builds, she measures flour, lard, salt. Her hands move without thought. Biscuits are not complicated. They just require being awake before anyone else. And she's very good at that. By the time the first boarder comes down, a man whose name she's already forgotten, though she will serve him 3 meals a day for the next 2 weeks, the table is set, the coffee is hot, and the biscuits are golden. He does not say good morning. He sits, he eats, he leaves. This is how the day starts, and it will not stop starting this way for months. You're standing in the corner of that kitchen now, watching Caroline move from stove to table to sink and back again. You see the tightness in her shoulders, the way she holds her spine a little too straight, as if relaxing even an inch might let something collapse that she cannot afford to rebuild. Behind you, footsteps on the stairs, small ones. Mary and Laura, awake now, already dressed, coming up to help before school. They are 11 and 9, old enough to carry plates without dropping them, old enough to scrub pots until their hands are red, old enough to know that asking why will not change anything. Laura takes a stack of dishes and starts wiping them dry. Her hands are quick, efficient. She has learned not to waste motion. Every minute spent on one task is a minute stolen from the next, and there are always more tasks than minutes. You watch her glance toward the window, just a glance, quick as a breath, at the square of morning light that means the world outside is waking up. Other children her age are still in bed, or eating slow breakfasts, or deciding whether to wear this dress or that one. Laura is holding a wet plate and counting the hours until school starts, knowing that when school ends she will come straight back here to wash the lunch dishes, then the supper dishes, then whatever else needs washing. Mary is at the table, folding cloth napkins that will be unfolded and dirtied by noon. Carrie, too small to be useful yet, is still downstairs with Pa. By the time the girls leave for school, they will have already worked 3 hours. The boarders come and go. Some are polite. Some act as if the people serving them are furniture. Functional, necessary, but not worth noticing. One man clicks his tongue when the coffee's not hot enough. Another leaves his plate on the floor beside his chair, as if the girl who cooked his eggs should be grateful for the chance to bend down and pick up after him. Laura does not say anything. Neither does Mary. But you see the way Laura's jaw tightens, the way her eyes go flat and distant, the way she is learning to swallow humiliation like medicine, bitter, but necessary for survival. Then there is Mr. Bisbee. Benjamin Bisbee is not like the others. He is older, well-dressed, and he pays his board on time. He owns property in town, several buildings, including the red brick house on the edge of the settlement that no one is living in right now, but someone will rent eventually. He has money in a way that most people in Burr Oak do not, and he carries that money like a coat that never quite comes off, even when he is sitting at the breakfast table asking politely for more butter. He is also a singing teacher. Twice a week he gives lessons to anyone in town who can afford them, and sometimes to people who cannot if he is in a generous mood. He has taken an interest in Laura, not in a dangerous way, not in the way that makes Caroline watch too closely, but in the way of a man who recognises competence and thinks it should be trained into something more refined. He offers to teach Laura to sing properly, not the rough, simple song she knows, but scales, technique, breath control. Caroline agrees because Mr. Bisbee is their best-paying steady boarder, and because saying no to a man like that feels like a risk she cannot afford. So twice a week, Laura stands in the parlour and sings while Mr. Bisbee nods or frowns or taps his finger on the arm of his chair. She would rather be outside, she would rather be anywhere else. But she is learning a skill that has nothing to do with wanting, and everything to do with the fact that Mr. Bisbee must be pleased, because if Mr. Bisbee leaves, the hotel loses money it cannot afford to lose. You feel the shape of that bargain settle around Laura's shoulders like a yoke. She is 9 years old and she's already learning that her preferences do not matter as much as other people's comfort. The days blur together. Wake before dawn, light the fire, cook, serve, wash, dry, sweep. Run to school with a slice of bread in your hand because there was no time to sit. Sit at a school desk and try to remember grammar while your back aches and your fingers still smell like dish soap. Come home, cook again, serve again, wash again, climb down into the basement, sleep in a room that smells like other people's boots, wake before dawn, repeat. The Steadman family lives upstairs. William, his wife Mary, and their children packed into 1 or 2 rooms while running the same hotel the Ingalls family is trapped in. At first, there is an attempt at partnership, at shared purpose, but money has a way of souring even the best intentions. Charles begins to feel that the arrangement is unfair. He's working as hard as Steadman, Caroline is cooking every meal, the girls are cleaning every room, and at the end of the week, the wages feel more like an insult than a payment. Room and board, yes, but barely enough cash to buy thread or flour or the small things that children need and cannot make themselves. Steadman, for his part, is watching the hotel lose money. Burr Oak is a town the railroad passed by, which means travellers pass by too. The dining room is rarely full. The rooms upstairs sit empty more often than not. The saloon brings in some income, but not enough to make the building profitable, and certainly not enough to pay 2 families a living wage. The conversations between the 2 men grow shorter, sharper. Charles starts looking for other work. He hears about a job at the grist mill, steady hours, actual pay, and takes it without telling Steadman first. For a few weeks, it seems like a solution. Caroline can manage the hotel work with the girls' help. Charles can bring home wages that do not depend on whether a stranger decides to rent a room. But the mill job does not last. Either the pay is not what was promised, or the work dries up, or Charles realises that even with 2 jobs, the family is still sinking. The details are hazy in Laura's memory, but the result is clear. By winter, Charles is taking whatever work he can find, and that work keeps him away from home for days at a time. You sit with Caroline in the basement room on a night when Charles is gone. The girls are asleep. The saloon above is loud. Men laughing, someone singing off-key, the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. Caroline is mending a dress by lamplight, her needle moving in and out of fabric that has already been mended twice before. Her face is still, but you can see the tension in the way she holds her mouth, the way her shoulders hunch forward as if she's bracing against a wind that will not stop blowing. She is alone, not just tonight, but in a deeper way. Alone in this town, in this arrangement, in this life that keeps shrinking no matter how hard she works to hold it open. If something happens, if one of the girls gets sick, if the hotel burns, if Steadman decides the partnership is over, she has no one to turn to and nowhere to go. That is the weight you feel in this room. Not just poverty, isolation. And then, in February of 1877, the saloon catches fire. You smell it before you see it. Smoke, sharp and chemical, not the clean smoke of a wood stove, but the acrid stink of something burning that should not be burning. Someone shouts. Boots pound on the stairs. By the time Caroline gets the girls out of the basement and into the street, half the town is already there, forming a bucket brigade from the nearest well to the saloon door. The flames are inside, licking up the walls, and if they reach the upper floors, the whole hotel will go, which means the basement will fill with smoke, which means everything the Ingalls family owns, already so little it fits in one trunk, will be ash by morning. Men are running, shouting, passing buckets hand to hand. You see Charles in the line, his face streaked with soot, his shirt soaked. You see Stedman at the door, throwing water as fast as the buckets arrive. And there, in the middle of the chaos, is Mr. Bisbee, holding a bucket, pumping it up and down with great seriousness, water sloshing everywhere, except the bucket has no bottom. Someone must have grabbed it in the panic without realizing it was broken, and Bisbee, in his hurry, did not notice until he had already made 3 trips to the well. By the time someone points it out, the fire is nearly under control and Bisbee is standing there soaking wet, holding a useless bucket, looking for all the world like a man who has just discovered that effort and result are not always the same thing. Later, someone will laugh about it. Later, it will become a story people tell when they want to lighten a dark evening. But right now, standing in the smoke and the cold, watching men fight to save a building that barely makes enough money to feed the people living in it, no one is laughing. The fire is put out. The hotel does not burn. But the close call leaves a mark. Caroline stands in the basement that night, smelling smoke in every piece of fabric, every corner, every breath, and thinks about how close they came to losing even this. A borrowed room under a saloon that caught fire because someone was careless with a lamp or a cigarette, or maybe just because bad luck is flammable. Not long after, the Stedman partnership officially ends. There is no dramatic fight, no shouting, just a quiet agreement that this arrangement is not working for anyone. The Ingalls family moves out of the basement and into rented rooms above a grocery store still on the main street, still near the saloon, and are still trapped in a town that offers work but not wages, shelter but not safety. The new rooms are not better. They are smaller, if anything, and the noise is the same. Boots on stairs, voices through walls, the constant reminder that you're living in someone else's space on someone else's terms. And the bills are piling up. Groceries bought on credit, doctor visits that have not been paid, rent owed to landlords who are patient until they are not. Caroline is pregnant again. Another mouth coming, another body to feed and clothe and worry over. And she is working through the exhaustion, through the nausea, through the fear that this child will be like Freddie, fragile and brief and gone before she can learn how to hold on tight enough. You see her hands shake sometimes, just for a moment, when she thinks no one is looking. You see the way she presses them flat against her apron, willing them still. Laura sees it too. She's old enough now to understand that money is not just a thing adults talk about. It is the invisible fence around every choice, every meal, every day. She hears her parents' voices late at night, low and urgent, talking about numbers that do not add up. She sees the way her father's face goes tight when the grocer mentions the balance. She watches her mother count eggs before taking them to sell, as if each one is a coin they cannot afford to drop. And she knows, in the way children know things they are not supposed to know, that something is about to break. Mr. Bisbee is still around, still boarding with them, still paying, mostly on time, but also still keeping a mental ledger of what is owed and what is overdue. He is a businessman. After all, he did not get rich by forgetting debts, and when the Ingalls family needs to rent a house, a real house, with walls and a door and a place for Caroline to give birth away from the noise and the strangers, Bisbee is the one who owns a small red brick house on the edge of town that no one is using. He agrees to rent it to them, which means now they owe him not just for board, not just for singing lessons, but for the roof over their heads. You stand in that little brick house in the spring of 1877. It is quiet here, away from the main street. The air smells like grass and dirt instead of grease and smoke. For a moment it almost feels like relief. A small house, a little space, a chance to breathe without a saloon shaking the ceiling. But relief costs money they do not have, and in May, when Caroline gives birth to Grace Pearl Ingalls, the joy of another daughter is wrapped tight with the dread of another bill the doctor will expect to be paid, another set of clothes that will need sewing, Another future that depends on whether Pa can find work that does not disappear after 2 weeks. Laura holds her baby sister and feels the weight of her. Not the weight of the baby. Grace is tiny, light as a breath. But the weight of knowing that this small person is now one more reason the family cannot afford to fail. Outside, the debt is growing teeth. Inside, Carolyn is recovering from childbirth with no rest, no help, and no guarantee that the rent will be paid next month. Charles is working, somewhere, doing something, but it is not enough. It is never enough. The math does not work. 5 children, 2 parents, 1 rented house, and a list of creditors who are starting to lose patience. That is when Mrs. Starr makes her offer. But that is a different chapter. Tonight, you are still here, in the spring of 1877, watching a family try to hold together with nothing but stubborn love and the fading hope that tomorrow might be kinder than today. I would like Laura to come and live with me. The words arrive on a Tuesday afternoon in late spring, carried into the small brick house by a woman in a clean dress with her hair pinned neatly under a bonnet that has never been mended. Mrs. Eunice Starr, the doctor's wife, standing in the doorway with her hands folded and her voice calm, as if she has just offered to borrow a cup of flour instead of a child. Caroline is at the table, folding laundry that is still damp because there was no time to let it dry fully in the sun. Grace is asleep in a basket near the stove. Mary and Carrie are outside, hanging the rest of the wash. Laura is at the sink scrubbing a pot, and she goes very still when she hears her name. Caroline does not answer right away. She sets down the shirt she was folding. She straightens her spine. She looks at Mrs. Starr with the kind of steady, unblinking gaze that mothers use when they are deciding whether to be polite or to shut a door in someone's face. "I'm sorry?" Caroline's voice is careful, neutral, giving nothing away yet. Mrs. Starr steps inside uninvited, as if the invitation was implied by the fact that she knocked at all. "Laura," she says, glancing toward the girl at the sink. "She's a capable child, I've noticed." And I thought, well, my husband and I have been talking and we would be happy to take her in. She could help me around the house, and we would treat her just like our own. Give her a good home, good food, a proper bed. You hear what she's not saying. Better than this. Better than what you can give her. Better than a rented house with debts piling up, and a father who is gone more than he is here. Laura's hands are still in the dishwater, but her fingers have stopped moving. She's listening to every word, and she understands more than Mrs. Starr thinks she does. This is not about kindness. This is about convenience. A household that needs another set of hands but does not want to pay wages. A child who can scrub and cook and mind younger children without complaint. Because what choice does she have if her own family cannot feed her? Caroline's jaw tightens. Just a fraction. Just enough that you see the muscle shift under her skin. "That's very generous of you," Carolyn says, her voice still even, still controlled. But Laura is needed here. Mrs. Starr tilts her head, surprised, as if she expected gratitude, not refusal. "Mrs. Ingalls, I know things have been difficult for you. Everyone in town knows. And I only thought, well, one less mouth to feed might make things easier, for all of you." There it is, the blade hidden under the kindness. You watch Caroline's face, and for a moment, you see everything she is not allowed to say. You see the fury at being pitied, the humiliation of having her poverty discussed in parlours by women who have never had to choose between buying flour and paying rent. The violation of having someone stand in her house and suggest that her daughter might be better off somewhere else, as if a mother's love can be outweighed by a full pantry. But Caroline does not say any of that. She folds her hands very deliberately, and she speaks in a voice that is quiet and final. Laura stays with us. 3 words, no explanation, no apology, no room for negotiation. Mrs. Starr blinks. She opens her mouth as if to argue, to press the point, to explain again how reasonable this offer is. But something in Caroline's face stops her. It is not anger exactly. It is something colder and harder. A line drawn in stone that will not move no matter how much weight you put on it. "Well," Mrs. Starr says after a pause that lasts too long, "if you change your mind, we won't." Mrs. Starr adjusts her bonnet, smooths her skirt, nods once stiffly, and turns toward the door. "I was only trying to help." Caroline does not answer. She watches the woman leave, watches the door close, and then she stands there, perfectly still, as if moving even an inch might shatter the control she's barely holding on to. Laura turns from the sink. Her hands are dripping. Her eyes are wide. "Ma?" Caroline looks at her. Really looks at her. At this 9-year-old girl who's too thin and works too hard, and has already seen more loss than most children should carry. And Caroline thinks about what it would mean to let her go. To wake up tomorrow and not see her at the table. To cook meals that Laura will never eat. To lie down at night and count 3 daughters instead of 4, knowing that the missing one is sleeping in someone else's house, after answering to someone else's name, becoming someone else's convenient labour. No, not while Caroline still has breath in her body. "You're staying here," Caroline says, and her voice is gentle now, the iron hidden under softness. "Do you understand me? You're staying here." Laura nods. She does not cry. She does not ask what would have happened if Caroline had said yes. She just nods and goes back to scrubbing the pot and lets the relief settle into her chest like a stone she can finally set down. But the damage is done, because Mrs. Starr will go home and tell her husband what happened, and Dr. Starr will mention it to someone at the general store, and that person will tell someone else, and by the end of the week everyone in Burr Oak will know that the Ingalls family, already poor, and already struggling, turned down help when it was offered. Some people will admire that. Some will call it pride. Most will call it foolish. And the ones who are owed money will start to wonder, if you cannot afford to keep all your children, how do you expect to pay your debts? You see the shift happen over the next few weeks. It is not loud. It is not obvious. But the grocer's smile gets thinner when Caroline comes in. The landlord's patience starts to fray. The space for grace, already narrow, closes a little more each day. Charles comes home one evening and finds Caroline sitting at the table with a stack of bills in front of her. They are not large bills. Most families in Burr Oak owe more, but most families in Burr Oak are not living in a rented house with 5 children and no steady income and a reputation for refusing charity. "How much?" Charles asks, though he already knows the answer will be more than they have. Caroline does not look up. "Enough that we need to pay something. Soon." He sits down across from her. His hands are calloused, his shirt is worn through at the elbows, and his face carries the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from working hard and still falling behind. "I'll talk to Bisbee. Maybe he'll give us another week." "Maybe," Caroline says, but her tone suggests she does not believe in maybes anymore. The next day, Charles goes to see Mr. Bisbee. You're not there for the conversation, but you can imagine it. Charles standing with his hat in his hands, trying to maintain dignity while asking for leniency. Bisbee listening politely, tapping his fingers on his desk, doing the math in his head. How much is owed? How long it has been owed? How much longer he is willing to wait? And then Bisbee saying, very calmly, very reasonably, "Charles, I have been patient, but I have bills of my own. If you cannot pay the rent, I will need to take the horses. Not as punishment, not out of cruelty, just as collateral, just as the thing that still has value when everything else is gone." Charles comes home that evening and does not say anything at first. He just sits at the table, staring at his hands, and Caroline knows before he opens his mouth that the answer was no. He wants the horses, Charles says finally. Caroline closes her eyes. The horses are not just animals. They are the only way this family can leave. Without horses, the wagon is just a box on wheels. Without horses, they are trapped in Burr Oak with no way to get back to Walnut Grove, no way to try again somewhere else, no way to do anything except wait for the next creditor to knock on the door and ask for what they do not have. "When?" Caroline asks. "Soon." That night, after the children are asleep, Charles and Caroline sit in the dark and talk in whispers that you have to lean close to hear. "We could stay," Caroline says, though she does not sound like she believes it. "We could find a way to pay, eventually." "With what?" Charles asks, and the question hangs in the air like smoke. They both know the answer. There is no more work, there is no more credit. There is no more patience from the people they owe. Staying means losing the horses, and losing the horses means staying forever, which means watching the debts grow until there is nothing left but the shame of it. We leave, Charles says. Tonight. Caroline does not argue. She has already known, somewhere deep in the part of her that has been counting days and meals and coins, that it would come to this. She has already known that the only choice left is to run before they lose the one thing that still makes running possible. She nods. Charles stands. And you watch them move into action with the efficiency of people who have done this before, who have packed up and left in the middle of other nights, in other towns, for other reasons that all boil down to the same thing. Survival requires motion, and motion requires leaving before someone stops you. This is the moment. The one you saw at the beginning, in the dark, with the wagon already packed and the girls being woken from sleep. But now you understand what brought them here. Now you know that the midnight escape is not adventure. It is defeat dressed up as departure. It is the gap between owing money and keeping your family whole, and Charles Ingalls choosing, again, to keep his family whole, even if it means breaking every social contract, every promise to pay later, every assurance that he is a man of his word. He loads the wagon quietly. Caroline wakes the girls gently. They climb in without asking questions, because they have learned that questions do not change the direction of the wheels. And then the wagon rolls forward, out of Burr Oak, away from the debts and the basement room and the saloon fire, and the woman who wanted to take Laura and the landlord who wanted the horses and the year that will never appear in any of the books Laura writes later. Because some stories are too raw to sand down into something a child can read before bed. Behind them, the town sleeps. Ahead, Walnut Grove waits, as broke and worn as they left it, but at least familiar. And in the wagon, a family that has just chosen itself over everything else, knowing that the cost of that choice is a reputation they will never fully repair, and a year they will spend the rest of their lives trying to forget. This is the missing year. This is the year Laura erased. And now you know why. The wagon reaches Walnut Grove at sunrise. Not in darkness this time, not in secret. The wheels roll into town under a sky that is turning pale gold at the edges, and you can see the faces of the people who are already awake. Farmers heading to fields, a woman carrying water from the well, a child chasing chickens out of a garden. They see the Ingalls wagon coming. They recognize it. They recognize the family inside it. And you see the moment of calculation on their faces, the quick math of memory. Didn't they leave? Didn't they go to Iowa? And here they are again, with the same tired horses and the same patched canvas, and the same look of people who are returning because they have nowhere else to go. No one waves. No one comes running to greet them, but no one turns away either. This is how frontier towns work. Everyone fails at something. Everyone has debts they wish they could erase and choices they wish they could take back. The Ingalls family fled Burr Oak owing rent, and by now the story has probably travelled. Small towns have long memories and short distances, but Walnut Grove has seen worse. Charles pulls the wagon up to the house of Reverend Alden, a man whose job requires him to practice what he preaches about charity and second chances. The Reverend steps out, sees the family, and does not ask questions. He just nods and says, "Come inside. We'll make room." You watch Caroline climb down from the wagon, holding Grace, with Mary, Laura, and Carrie following. Her back is straight. Her face is calm. She does not explain, does not apologize, does not offer any story other than the fact of her presence. She simply says, "Thank you," and walks into the house as if this is just another stop on a journey that has never had a clear destination. Inside, the Reverend's wife is already pulling out blankets, clearing space. Oh, doing the quiet work that women do when they know that asking too many questions will only add to someone's burden. She looks at Caroline, really looks at her, the way one woman looks at another when she recognizes exhaustion that goes deeper than a single bad season, and then she just starts making coffee. Over the next few days, the Ingalls family settles into borrowed space. Again. Charles looks for work. Again. The girls go back to school and try to pretend that nothing happened, that they're just picking up where they left off, that the year in Iowa was a dream or a detour and not the kind of failure that leaves marks on the inside. But Laura knows. She's 10 now, old enough to hear the whispers at school, the glances from the other children's mothers, the way some people are kind and some people are careful, and some people are just quietly relieved that their own families are not the ones who had to run from Burr Oak in the middle of the night. She learned something in those months. Shame is not loud. It is the space between what you say and what people already know. It is the silence after someone asks, "How was Iowa?" and you answer, "Fine," and they nod and change the subject because everyone understands that fine is a lie you are all agreeing to pretend is true. And then, a few months later, something absurd happens. Charles Ingalls is appointed Justice of the Peace for Walnut Grove Township. You read that correctly. The man who fled Iowa owing rent. The man who has moved his family 6 times in 12 years. None. The man whose financial history is a catalogue of failed claims and unpaid debts. This man is now the legal authority tasked with settling disputes, administering oaths, and upholding the law in Walnut Grove. The irony is almost too sharp to touch. But here is the thing. On the frontier, everyone has failed. Everyone has owed money they could not pay. Everyone has made promises they could not keep. The question is not whether you failed. The question is whether you are still trying. Charles Ingalls is still trying. He shows up. He does the work. He does not pretend to be perfect. And maybe that is exactly why people trust him to be fair. Because he knows what it is like to stand on the wrong side of a debt, to feel the weight of judgment, to need a second chance that the law does not always provide. He serves as Justice of the Peace from 1877 to 1879, and then the family moves again, this time to Dakota Territory, to a homestead claim near De Smet, to a place that will finally, after years of false starts, become something close to permanent. But Burr Oak goes with them, not in their wagon, in their silence. The girls do not talk about it. Caroline does not talk about it. Charles does not talk about it. It becomes the year that did not happen, the gap in the story, the thing that sits in the corner of the room where no one looks directly at it, but everyone knows it is there. And then, decades later, in 1930, Laura is 63 years old and sitting at a table in a farmhouse in Missouri with a stack of lined tablets in front of her and a pencil in her hand. You are with her now, in that quiet room. The air smells like wood and old paper. Outside, the country is in the middle of the Great Depression. Banks are failing. Families are losing farms. The whole nation is learning what it feels like to work hard and still fall behind, to do everything right and still lose everything. Laura is writing her life story. Pioneer Girl, she calls it, and she has reached the Burr Oak year. She writes it down, all of it. The hotel basement, the saloon fire, the debts, the midnight escape, Mrs. Starr's offer to take her away, her mother's refusal, the humiliation of returning to Walnut Grove with nothing to show for the year except survival. She writes it in plain language, without decoration, the way you write something that still hurts to remember. And then she has to decide, does this story go into the books? Yeah, her daughter Rose is a successful writer, an editor, a woman who understands markets and audiences and what people want to read. Rose looks at the Burr Oak material and sees a problem. Not a factual problem, a narrative problem. The Little House books are supposed to be about triumph, about pioneers who faced hardship and overcame it through grit and family and faith. They are supposed to make readers feel that America's past was hard but noble, that poverty can be survived with dignity, that moving west was an adventure and not a series of desperate gambles that mostly ended in failure. Burr Oak does not fit that story. Burr Oak is about a family so poor that a stranger thought she could buy a child with the promise of regular meals. It is about a father who chose to break his word rather than lose his horses. It is about the gap between the pioneer myth, brave, independent, self-reliant, and the pioneer reality, which was often just poverty with better PR. So when the Little House books are published, starting in 1932, they skipped from Minnesota directly to Dakota Territory. No Iowa, no hotel, no basement room, no Mrs. Starr, no midnight escape. Just a clean jump forward, as if 1876 to 1877 never happened. The books become beloved. Millions of readers grow up with Laura's story and think they know her life. They know the log cabin in Wisconsin, the Kansas Prairie, the Minnesota Creek, the long Dakota winter. They do not know Burr Oak. They cannot know Burr Oak because Laura chose not to let them see it. Was that wrong? You sit with that question for a moment because it is not simple. Laura was not lying. She just omitted. She was not inventing a false past. She was selecting which parts of the true past to share. Every memoir does this. Every story leaves things out. But what gets lost when we erase the hard parts? What gets lost is the full cost. The real price of survival. The number of times that dignity is not enough, that hard work is not enough, that trying your best still leaves you in a basement under a saloon, with a woman offering to take your daughter off your hands like she is furniture you can no longer afford to keep. What gets lost is the part of the story that would have told Depression-era readers, you are not failing because you are weak. You are failing because the system is designed to make people like us fail. And sometimes survival looks like running in the dark, and that is not shameful. That is just true. But Laura did not write that book. She wrote the other one. The one where pioneers are noble and hardship is temporary and families stay together through sheer force of love. And maybe she needed to write that version. Maybe her readers needed to read it. Maybe we all need stories that are softer than the truth, especially when the truth is still bleeding. In 2014, 84 years after Laura first wrote it down, Pioneer Girl is finally published in full, with all the parts she left out. Scholars read it and say, "Oh, so that is what happened." Readers read it and say, "Oh, so it was worse than we thought." But by then, Laura has been gone for decades. She died in 1957, at 90, having spent the last years of her life as America's beloved pioneer grandmother, the woman who taught generations of children that hardship could be survived with grace. She never had to answer for the year she erased. She never had to explain why Burr Oak vanished. She just let it go, and the books went on without it, and the story became the version we all know, the one where the family is poor but never quite desperate, struggling but never quite broken, and no one ever offers to take a child away because surely it would never come to that. Except it did come to that. In the summer of 1877, in a small brick house in Iowa, it came exactly to that. And now you know. You have seen the midnight wagon that Laura never put in her books. You have stood in the basement room she never described. You have watched her mother refuse an offer that Laura never let her readers imagine. You have lived in the missing year. Yes, the year that history tried to forget and that Laura helped it forget. Because sometimes forgetting is the only way to keep moving forward. But you will remember. Because someone should. Because the real story, the one with the basement and the debts and the offer and the escape, is not less American than the story Laura chose to tell. It is just more honest about what America costs. Tonight, when you close your eyes, you will see a wagon rolling away from a small Iowa town in the dark. You will see a mother holding her daughter close. You will see a father who chose his family over his word, his survival over his reputation, his children over his pride, and you will know that Laura Ingalls Wilder, the woman who wrote some of the most famous stories in American literature, and all left out the most important story of all, the one about what it really took to stay together when the whole world was pulling them apart. That story is yours now, the year that vanished, the year you were never supposed to see, the year that explains everything,